that's the best part. Kenny's been out to a few of them, so he knows what we do.
Hmm.
But there's a couple other ones, I think. But it's just now that they got over the fact that we're not trying to take their jobs away. That cracked me up when I heard that. I said, "What? We're not even close to doing that."
Yeah, Captain asked me, why didn't I become a firefighter? I'm like, I don't want to run into a burning building.
No way, man. That's not what it's
That's
about. Kenny's been out to a few of them, Yeah, so yeah, definitely.
As people trickle in, we'll give everybody a few more minutes and get the people who'd like to sign in right at 7. Give them a few minutes to acclimate and make sure their Zoom updates and everything. Hey, Jen.
Hey there, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Can't complain. Allergies are up a little bit. So I'll spend most of the time on meat, mostly so you don't hear me sneezing half the night.
Yeah, last few weeks have been really rough. My Benadryl is now lasting only about 2 hours. I took it about 2 hours ago, so we'll see how this goes.
Oof. I can't tell whether it's for me actually working on my house today. It's like I'm scraping and sanding some of my windows. So I'm not sure which one it is, if it's the plants or if it's the dust from that. But yeah, it's been a little bit of an interesting one. But you and I both suffer from allergies, so we know the drill.
Yeah, last month's presentation, I had to mute myself a few times to uh,
Oh, I remember.
avoid sneezing on camera.
And you did a good job. Your timing was pretty good. You couldn't have been better. You were like those radio guys who are on the radio with that 7-second button.
How are you doing, Stacy? How's Florida?
All good here, Patrick. We got low humidity and we're in the low to mid 70s most days. A lot of traveling Broadway theater coming through, and we're enjoying that.
That sounds nice.
Torture. It's torture. We're going through it though.
Okay.
Okay. Meeting chat.
So how long will the event be?
Which event?
The
This.
live stream.
So this runs from 7 o'clock. Well, we start at about 7:03 to give the people who sign in right at 7 a few extra minutes. And then it goes until about 9 o'clock. We'll
Okay,
try and end it a little bit early so we can have question and answer.
sounds good. Thank you.
We do end it at on time.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Give everybody about 3 more minutes to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I do appreciate how there's a rush of registrations in the last few minutes right before 7 o'clock.
Yeah, strangely enough, it sends you a second time to the registration, even if you get already the meeting code and passcode.
I'm guilty of registering late. For
No
some reason,
problem.
when I tried to a few days ago, it was just like, do you want to follow this event? And I couldn't tell me I think it was my phone, not Eventbrite, but it
Mhm.
was just like, whatever, I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Uh,
published the Zoom and that's really the best option since Eventbrite's become problematic, but as long as you get in, that's the important part.
That's why I signed in early. Because I knew, Zoom, it made me register again. But it's okay. I mean, all I had to do was put my name and city in and my cert trained, yes, and took me and send me another email and I just hit the join the meeting. So it brought me right in.
I'm sorry, sir.
Give everybody about 1 more minute, then we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Watts Forbes. I am the LAFD Community Emergency Response Team Central Bureau Coordinator. And tonight is our third Wednesday of the month, CERT Continuing Education Training. Tonight's topic is going to be on organizing neighborhood disaster response teams. It is, in my opinion, the purpose of CERT from its inception. And in talking with the grandfather of CERT, Chief Borden, as we were describing our neighborhood team program and what we're really trying to do with it, he echoed that was always the intent, to take the CERT training down to the neighborhood block level and really create response teams that can and do respond to a disaster before the professionals can arrive. And so really what we've done is we've extended CERT down to that bottom level and really completed the promise. Of course, for those of you who have not taken the CERT training yet, we're going to cover what the CERT training does and really see the origins of what we're trying to do here and really go through as an overview of all the elements. And really, this is not a complete training where we expect you're going to take this one webinar with us and then you're going to be able to start your neighborhood team. This is really a start to the journey along the way. One thing that we can see happening, if you have been paying attention to the news, is that there's always been disasters around the world, but we're seeing a more frequent, an increase in severity and frequency of the number of disasters. We've always had periodic, really bad hurricanes, tsunamis, or earthquakes, but we're seeing it month after month, in some areas week after week. And the areas that are getting hit over and over again with not only the same kind of disaster, but increasing levels of disaster. And really, we've been lucky here in Los Angeles. I know some of you are coming from other parts of the country, if not the world, but the origin of the CERT program, the Community Emergency Response Team, was here in Los Angeles City. And we've really been lucky because while we had Northridge in 92, the Northridge earthquake, which was bad and really bad if you lived in that area, other parts of Los Angeles, we lost power. We had very little damage, if any. But if you lived in the valley, lived on the west side, it was horrific. Buildings collapsed, freeways collapsed. Of course, power was out for long periods of time over there. And those people who experienced it certainly are not going to forget it. But other parts of Los Angeles, on the east side, Northeast LA, coastal San Pedro, really did not experience anywhere near that kind of level of devastation, if anything. In fact, the last regional disaster the Los Angeles area experienced was the 1938 Los Angeles flood, where it was such a huge amount of rain that Los Angeles is a basin. All the rain comes in and kind of flows through the city, throughout the region, from the mountains all the way out to the coast. And the last couple of years, we've started to see the atmospheric rivers start to hit us. Last year, we got weeks of rain, torrential downpours that really tested the limits of our infrastructure. And even in February, we got some pretty significant rain. We got over half of our year's worth of rain in one day. And that is expected to get worse. It's not expected to get better. We're expected to have these atmospheric rivers every year now. And we can only expect that eventually it's going to reach a point where the infrastructure is not going to be able to handle it. And certainly, another earthquake is always on the forefront of our mind. Now, we have a privilege here in Los Angeles City where we have a fully professional fire department, and I would argue one of the best in the world. But it is staffed in a way that it meets the needs of the city at any given point. We have about 3,500 firefighters currently on staff, spread over 3 shifts, and that really, if you calculate it out, means that there's about 1,000 firefighters on duty at any given time in the city of Los Angeles, which it is about 4 million, but during the business day really swells to about 6 million. And if you look at the LA County region, LA region, we're talking about 10 million people that live in this area, and those other cities in the county are probably just as thinly staffed in terms of professional responders. So when something overwhelms them, such as a disaster, and really that is the definition of a disaster. A disaster is anything that overwhelms the responders in terms of staffing, resources, time. If something happens or multiple incidents happen all at the same time, it really can stress the limits. And the expectation is that we have mutual aid. We're going to have first responders coming from other parts of the county, other parts of the state. But if you're talking about a true regional disaster, such as an earthquake along the San Andreas Fault, the entire region is going to be impacted. And you're going to be looking for resources from other states, and that's going to take time. We'll get a little bit right at the very beginning, but the main flow of first responders coming from other parts of the country, it's going to take a couple of days, if not a week, to really start to get them in here. And for that, FEMA has rated LA County as the #1 county in the United States most at risk for a disaster. All the things that I've said, we're not used to having disasters. We're not used to preparing for a disaster. We're not used to having not enough resources. Even if you talk to firefighters and say, hey, what are you going to do if there's not enough? They say, well, we'll bring them in from somewhere else. The plans are in place, but they haven't been tested. And so we think we know what's going to happen. We do, to some degree, test the plans, but in terms of an actual real disaster, such as if you look at other parts of the country, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, dust storms, seasonal floods, they test their plans yearly. So it will be very interesting to see what happens. Of course, the expectation is when you call 911, the fire department's going to show up or the police are going to show up, and they're going to want to. That is for sure, but they're going to be triaging the calls that come in to deal with the most severe, deal with the ones they can deal with, and really the minor calls, which may be a major incident to you. Certainly, if you have to call 911, it's because you have an emergency. It may not rank high enough above the other calls that are coming in to get the fire department to you as soon as you would like them to come. We've seen, and even in the rains, PCH, of course, always has something happen. It's for those of you who don't know what Pacific Coast Highway is, it's a 4-lane highway that runs up the coast, and every time it rains, parts of it fall into the ocean, or it's along a cliff, parts of the cliff come down onto PCH. So it's constantly getting closed and having to be worked on. But we can see here pictures of just kinds of disasters that, an earthquake or a flood or tornado or hurricane can cause. One thing that's important is that, and we've tried to move away from it, we're not trying to scare people. We're not trying to say, if you don't prepare, you're going to die. Or if you're not ready for the theoretical 8 point something earthquake that the San Andreas can give, um, you're going to lose your home, you're going to lose everything. That's certainly not the case. Statistically, 99.999% of the people in the region will survive after the big one. And that is simply because building codes and general state of infrastructure. But what we're going to see is that there's going to be areas hit far worse than others. Just like with Northridge. I live in Northeast LA. We lost power. Things came off the shelves, but there was no structural damage here. But if you lived in Northridge, you probably had structural damage. Now, the great thing about most construction is that, at least within the single family homes, is that it's wood frame construction. Wood frames are designed to really move with the earthquake and not snap and break. If you're living in a concrete bunker, those concrete walls don't move. And when you have that level of energy flowing through them, shaking them, pulsating into them, generally speaking, something's going to give, and it could be a wall, a structural wall. So you really need to look at your home and find out what kind of construction are you in. Is it up to standard, more modern building codes? If you live in something that was constructed in the late 1800s, you really need to look into, making sure your home is retrofit and make sure that it is capable of absorbing that kind of damage. If you happen to live in a high-rise building, those are built to the latest building codes, and those are designed to sway with the energy of an earthquake. If you've ever been in downtown LA in one of the high rises, you actually see that on a windy day, the building will sway with the wind as it's designed to. And that way you have something that's going to absorb the energy of the earthquake or wind, and not snap and break. But beyond that, there's no way to predict an earthquake. And anyone who tells you otherwise is really trying to sell you something or trying to convince you of something that's not true. There are earthquakes all the time. There's earthquakes that we don't even feel in Los Angeles. The joke is that if it's under a 6.0, it's a truck driving by. And that's simply because we're used to it. It used to be maybe about 10 years ago when you start talking about an earthquake or feeling an earthquake, people talk about it for a week. Now, if there's a slight jolt or something, we talk about it for maybe half an hour, maybe 3 hours, and then we've already forgotten about it. And that's good and bad in that we're not afraid of the earthquake, but it's bad because when was the last time you checked your supplies? When was the last time you made sure that you were up to date on your medical certifications, your first aid CPR? When was the last time you took a community emergency response team training class or came out to a drill or a refresher? We normalize it and then forget about it. And that's problematic and dangerous. What we can do is we can prepare. We can get ready. We can make sure we check our supplies. Just like at daylight saving time, you're supposed to check your batteries or replace your batteries in your smoke alarm. You should also check your supplies, make sure, hey, any food or water, nothing's expired, or if it's about to expire, you cycle through it so you don't waste it. You have a chance to resupply it and then utilize what you have in that kit. But one of the biggest things is fear of unknown, especially for those who've never been in a real earthquake. I'm talking about something like Northridge, something where the earth shook for more than a couple of seconds. If you're talking about a 5 to 10 second shake, that is much different than a jolt. And it tends to be that people fear the unknown, in that the unknown is scary. And I don't want to think about something that's scary. I don't want to prepare for what may be the worst day of my life so that I can make sure that it's not the worst day of my life. It's a little counterintuitive if you ask me, but it is human nature. I don't want to think about something that scares me, so I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to plan for it. I'm not going to train for it. And then when it does happen, I mean, some people have said, well, I guess I'm just going to die. But we already know you're probably not. So it's not the earthquake that you're preparing for, it's the aftermath of the earthquake that you're preparing for. It's making sure that you, when the power goes out and your water is not safe to drink and your natural gas doesn't work, that you have food that doesn't require heating, or you have a way to heat it, boil water, and you have a way to charge your flashlights and whatever creature comforts you need, because the reality is infrastructure is going to get damaged. And chances are we're going to be without power for days, if not weeks, or worse. And you can look at any time a major category 3 or greater hurricane hits and makes contact with the city or town or village or whatever, how long is it before they have power? I mean, sometimes it's years, depending on how remote that area is. If you're talking about something like Haiti, years before some of that area actually got power back. Now, fortunately, we don't live in Haiti, but we just don't know how bad it's going to be. So at the very least, we have to prepare not just for 3 days of inconvenience, but upwards of a week to maybe 3 weeks. What you do before, during, and after determines how well you will recover from the unexpected. And it's been said over and over again that it takes a village, but it's really a community that plans and practices and trains together that is going to recover faster. Because if we're trying to recover on our own, it is going to be a massive burden. You're trying to take care of your family, you're trying to pick up the pieces quite literally. And not everyone has the skills that they might need. So if you rely on your neighbors and you help your neighbors, you're not being you're not mooching off your neighbors. You're not taking advantage of your neighbors. You're contributing to that community. You're all going to get through it faster and better and more comfortable than if you try and do it by yourself. We really want to emphasize that it is preparedness that empowers you to not be afraid. If you know that you're prepared and you're ready and you're trained, and you know how long your supplies are going to last you, what is there to fear? Fear of death, well, 99.99% of you are going to survive it. So you're probably not going to die. Being without power, being without cell phones for 3 weeks, without drinkable water coming out of the tap for 3 weeks, without natural gas when I turn on the stove for 3 weeks, that's terrifying. But if I have supplies and I have training, I can mitigate that and at least know the first week at least, maybe 2 weeks, I'm going to be okay. Starts to get to week 3, maybe 4, going to be relying on our neighbors a little bit more at that point. But hopefully by then we're going to have professional responders coming in from all over the country, and they're going to help us get on our feet faster. Statistically speaking, during a disaster, 95% of the victims are rescued by community first responders. The word victim was actually taken out of the community emergency response team training. We used to talk about victims. We're talking about survivors. For people who have survived the disaster and now need help, but also people who have survived the disaster and are able to help. And so this really should read 95% of survivors of a disaster will be rescued by fellow survivors. And so that's what I want us to think about is we don't want to be a victim. We want to be a survivor because survivors make it through. Victims, they might not be able to help themselves. That's why you're a victim. So I know a lot of people who signed up said they were not CERT trained yet, and we open this up. This is always open to the community. We share this on Nextdoor. We want to get people to take the basic training. So the question is, how do I find an in-person CERT class? And I specify and I emphasize the in-person part because we constantly hear people asking, is it online? Is it on Zoom? University of Utah did a online CERT class, and I believe it might still be there. I don't know. The reason why we emphasize the in-person stuff is because there's a lot of hands-on skills that are taught in the in-person class that can't be taught on the online class. Learning how to do basic medical, using triangular bandage, how to create a sling and swath with it, how to do hands-only CPR. You can watch someone doing a video on it, but unless you actually do the hands-on skills yourself, you don't know if you're capable of doing it. You don't know if you're doing it right. So we really, really ask you, don't try and take an online class, or if you do take an online class, make sure you can also take the in-person class or come to a refresher and actually get the hands-on skills done, because there's so much that you need to practice in person, hands-on. You're just not going to get out of an online class. LA City teaches the class. We created the class. We probably teach more classes than anyone else in the country. What we do is we run it 2 weeks. I'm sorry, 2 months. Every 2 months, every odd month, a new class starts, or rather, multiple classes throughout the city. And I would estimate there's anywhere between 6 and 8 classes starting every 2 months. It's a 17.5-hour program, runs for 7 weeks, 1 night a week for 2.5 hours a session. And you do need to complete all of them to get your certificate of completion. But it's just great training that you go through. And I'm not a firefighter. I don't work for the fire department. I'm a volunteer. The instructors who teach the class in LA City are firefighters who work for the city, who have been doing this for a very long time. They have a lot of experience working on the job. And the ingenious part about the CERT training is it was really designed to be kind of the basics that firefighters learn. Everything we learn in a CERT training is what firefighters learn. And that's how it was designed. It was designed by the fire department, and it was designed for that reason, so that we really do get the basics. LA County also offers the classes. For LA City, if you go to the website cert-la.com/eventbrite, you'll be able to see a list of the classes that are on the roster and that are starting soon or currently going on. For LA County, and we don't really care if you take LA City or you take LA County, but we want to get you in the program, get you trained. They do a 24-hour program. It is one of 2 ways that they do it. 8 weeks, 1 night a week, for 3 hours a session, or they'll do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where it's Friday night from 5 to 9, then Saturday, Sunday all day. And I don't know how other jurisdictions in the country do it. Everybody, I'm sure, does it slightly differently. What LA City doesn't do that all the other programs should be doing is a final exercise where you put it all together. And that's really where we as the CERT coordinators come in, because we're putting on those full exercises where you really get to do the hands-on stuff after the class. And the reason that LA City doesn't do it is because we're teaching 8 classes every 2 months. Most programs, you're lucky to get a CERT class every 6 months. LA County is maybe doing 3 or 4 CERT classes every couple of months. But this is where LA City is able to leverage our volunteer coordinators, such as myself and Chin, is we're able to put on these trainings, and we'll talk about one of those trainings in a little bit that's coming up. You're really going to see as we do some of these exercises, we try and make them very realistic. We try and include the fire department. We try and schedule them at different times of the day because, yeah, you may train during the day, but when the earthquake actually happens at 2:45 in the morning, the sun's not going to be out. It's going to be very different trying to use a flashlight or worse, your cell phone to light up what's in front of you than it is at 1 o'clock in the middle of the afternoon when the sun's out. And we do encourage you, if you get an opportunity to do a nighttime drill or a dark drill, practice in the dark with your flashlight. It is a very big difference. We did a drill, an in-house, an in-building search, and we didn't tell anybody, but the very first thing is we shut off the lights, and we could see people didn't have their flashlights with them, and they pulled out their cell phones, and because everybody knows your cell phone has a light on it, right? Well, it turned out in pitch black, that light goes about maybe 2 or 3 feet. A flashlight, you can shine across the entire room. So the people who were relying on their cell phones to provide light were at an extreme disadvantage compared to the people who had real, true flashlights on them. Hopefully those people have learned and have since updated their either their everyday carry or their CERT bags with actual flashlights. Or the other alternative is a headlamp. Headlamps are great because you can see she's wearing a headlamp here. It frees up your hands to be able to do things, especially if you have to work on someone who needs medical aid and you need to bandage them up. Trying to bandage someone with a flashlight in one hand or in your mouth is rather difficult compared to having a headlamp. One of the things we don't want you to fall under the belief of is that you can just take a class and you're going to become an expert at it. Really, it's a repetition. Unfortunately, if you do it once and only do it once, you'll probably forget about it in a couple of years, if not a couple of months. And so we say prepare, plan, train, drill, and then more importantly, repeat. You have to revisit your plans. You have to look at your supplies on a regular basis. The canned food that's only good for 5 years that you put in there 10 years ago might not be the thing you want to eat when the earthquake happens. The batteries that you have in your flashlight that you put in your bag 10 years ago have probably leaked and damaged the flashlight. So you want to make sure you're checking on your supplies. Things change. Where you work, where your kids go to school, the makeup of your neighborhood probably has changed in 10 years. And so you want to revisit your plans and make sure everyone is on a regular basis, knowing where they're supposed to go, planning on how to get there, having a backup location and maybe a second backup location, and then work with your neighbors on the plan of where are we all going to meet? Who are the priority people we need to make sure are okay? And if there's anybody trapped, how are we going to get them out? And what is our capabilities and skills? Then train to that plan. Then Drill. You train, you learn the skills, and then you put them in action and make sure that they work. Make sure that everybody's capable of doing it. I will tell you, no drill runs according to plan. No drill is perfect. There are always missteps, there are always mistakes, there's always things that can be done better. And that should be something that you strive for, is learning what can we do better next time? Not focusing on, well, that didn't go according to plan, so we all failed. Because we didn't. We learned, and that's the key, we learned what didn't go right. We learn where we need additional training. We learn where we need additional practice. We learn so we can do it better next time. And that should always be the goal. We always want to do it better next time. If you ever have a drill where everything went perfectly well and there was no lessons learned, there's two things that happened. One, you didn't actually have a good drill. It was not well planned. It did not test everything, because you would have discovered that there were issues and things that could be done better. Or you're also good at it that you should be teaching this class. Then repeat. I recommend you drill practice quarterly, if not every month. Every time there's an opportunity to take training, go take it. Every time there's an opportunity to go to a drill, go do it. Especially if there's no cost to go doing it. If you're deciding you want to become an EMT and take $10,000 worth of training at UCLA, cool, if you can do that. But if you have an opportunity to become an EMT for much cheaper, consider if it's something you want to do, and if you're capable of doing it and affording to do it, I recommend it. There are several levels here. We want to focus on the personal and family preparedness. That's really what the core of the CERT training is. How do we take care of ourselves and our family? And I say take care of ourselves first. Just like on an airplane, they tell you, in the event of a cabin decompression, the masks are going to come down. Put your mask on first before you put your mask on your child's, because you have a very short amount of time before you have lost the ability to oxygenate your blood and brain and you lose consciousness. If you try and put the mask on your child first who is panicking, and it takes you a minute to get that mask on your kid, and maybe a little bit longer, you might lose consciousness too. And now you're both in a lot of trouble because you didn't get the mask on your kid, and now you can't help your kid because you've lost consciousness. Take care of yourself. Make sure you have a flashlight. Make sure you have good, sturdy shoes. Make sure you have this stuff at your bed. Tie it to a bedpost so it doesn't travel across the room during the earthquake. Then, while you're protecting yourself from stepping on broken glass, and you have a flashlight so you don't trip on anything, go check on your kids, your family, make sure they're safe. After you've made sure your family is safe and everybody is okay, then, and only then, should you consider helping your neighbors. Organize your neighbors so that they can help other neighbors. Take the community emergency response team training. It's free in most areas. Burbank, I know, does charge for the class, but the way they work it out is, if you complete the class, you get half the money back. If you then sign up to be a disaster service worker and join their team, you get the other half of the money back. It's an incentive, because what we see a lot of times is people will sign up for free training because why not? And then they don't show up. Well, if the class is filled up at capacity, other people who might actually want to take the training go to the Eventbrite and says, the class is sold out. And they think, oh, I guess I can't take it. Or, oh, maybe I'll take it later. And then you decide not to show up. And that person could have taken your spot and gone. Now, the reality is this always happens. We get about a 50% no-show rate in a lot of classes. 50 people sign up for the class, 25 people show up for the class. So there's usually almost always room in the class. So I strongly recommend if you do see that, reach out to the instructor or just show up, and chances are you're going to be able to get into the class and training. Quarterly neighborhood disaster drills. As we help you get teams built out, we're going to help you with these disaster drills, planning them, practicing them, making sure they're comprehensive and they train where you need to, and then see where the weaknesses were. And then on your next quarterly drill, we'll address those weaknesses and practice those. Try and get better every single time. I can't emphasize this enough. Take care of yourself and your family first. Take care of yourself. Make sure you are safe. Then take care of your family. Then you can consider helping your neighbors. Emergency planning for the family is really starts, literally starts at home. There have been many times where there's been orders to evacuate a neighborhood for a variety of reasons. We have a fire that's coming down the mountain at your home, at your town, at your block. There's a flood, or the fire that didn't burn down your house. It's now raining and the hillside is giving way and sliding towards your homes. You want to make sure you have a plan to evacuate and a plan to meet somewhere. And I say that you should actually have two places that you should plan to meet. Someplace nearby your home, maybe just outside, maybe at the tree, maybe across the street. And somewhere farther away. Because there's been a lot of times where people are at work and at school and a neighborhood gets shut down and they can't get back into their neighborhood. Maybe there's an active shooter going on. Maybe there's a gas leak or something. And everyone knows that they're going to meet at the tree in their front yard, and they can't get into their neighborhood. So we recommend you have a second location somewhere a few blocks away, if not on the other part of town, that everybody knows to go to if they can't get home to their primary meet spot. This has always been the saying, have an out-of-state contact that everybody knows to call and check in with. I don't know if it is still true, but that is the theory. The local telephone network is going to be overwhelmed, and it may be easier to call out of state and reach somebody, and then everybody can check in with this out-of-state contact. Regardless of it's true or not, the practice is a good practice. If everybody calls Aunt Martha in Vermont, when everybody checks in with Aunt Martha knows your status and everyone else's status and can update everyone as they check in. Oh yeah, everyone's safe. They've checked in these people. Here's where they are right now. Here's where they're planning on going. And you can coordinate with Aunt Martha in another state to be able to contact the rest of your family if your local cell phone network or telephone network or even internet is not accessible. For those of us who have pets, I recommend that you have a sign that is going to note that you have pets. Cats, dogs, birds, tortoises, snakes, tarantulas, whatever, so that in the case you're not at home when there's a fire, the firefighters know that you have pets that you would like to have rescued. Also, I recommend that you have a card on you that also states this, because if you live alone but you have 13 cats and you get knocked out and can't remember that you have 13 cats, whoever finds you and rescues you, takes you to the hospital, they now have this information that they know that you have 13 cats waiting to be fed at home. And for those of us who have or had cats, know that they're not patient when food is not available. And finally, practice exit drills in the home. You need to know where you're going to meet, but it's also important to know how you're going to get there. If there's a fire in your hallway, is there another exit from your room? Usually there is. Usually it's a window. But if you're on the second floor or third floor of a home, how are you going to get down if the fire is outside your room? So I recommend having a ladder, a roll-up ladder. You can kick out the window, kick out the screen, drop the ladder down, make sure it's long enough, and then practice climbing out, hopefully without damaging the screen. Just know that it's going to work and tested before you actually need to do it. And then everyone should plan to test this. But as one of the firefighter instructors mentioned, make sure that your kids know that they're only supposed to be practicing it with you and not on their own. It used to be that we told people have 3 days worth of food and water. Now we're telling everybody to have at least 3 days of food and water. Preferably have at least 3 weeks of food and water. And in terms of the numbers, 1 gallon of water per person and pet per day. If you think about that, a family of 5 gallons for 3 weeks. 5 times 21. That's a lot of water. Make sure that you have food that doesn't need to be cooked and prepared. Canned food, by its very nature, is already cooked. So if you have canned food, it doesn't need to be heated up. It can be eaten out of the can directly. Might not be the greatest, but if you can't heat up and heat food, at the very least, you're not going to starve. Also remember, make sure you can open the can. Some cans, they can just pop right open, cool. Other ones, you actually need a can opener. And if your electric can opener doesn't work because the power's out, how are you going to get into those cans of food? The option for freeze-dried food is also good. Canned food might last 5 years or so. Freeze-dried food can last upwards of 20 years. Maybe not the best tasting thing, but it does require boiling water to rehydrate the food. So make sure that you have a way to heat water if you have freeze-dried food. Camping stoves, barbecue, something. Don't anticipate your gas working. Certainly don't anticipate your electricity working. They also have what are called meals ready to eat. This came out of the military. Some people swear by them. Other people swear they're the worst things ever. But if you're desperate and need calories, MREs are designed to feed a soldier in a war zone and provide the calories they need to be able to operate. Not something you really want to eat on a regular basis because a lot of calories, a lot of salt in these things. And they may or may not come with the heating elements. The heating elements, typically it's a few drops of water and it will heat up rather quickly. If you get the civilian versions, they might not come with those. You might have to buy them separately, or again, look for a way to heat those. If you have bottled water, or rather water bottles, we recommend you do, because if you have gallons and gallons of water, you're going to need a way to drink that water. I recommend the wide mouth bottles because they're easier to clean, but you can also get more water in faster and also get more water out faster. If you're trying to fill a pot of water from a water bottle that's a very small mouth, it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, camping stove. Make sure you have extra propane. 1 can of propane probably, or 1 bottle of propane, probably not. It's going to run out when you don't want it to run out. So if you have a few extras, always make sure you don't deplete them all before you go refill. Maybe, if you have 3, by the time you get into your second bottle, you're already preparing to go fill, and make sure you have that extra propane always on hand. One other critical thing is make sure you have any medications, extra medications that you may need, especially for the things that are critical to your health and survival, like heart medications, insulin, stuff like that. Talk to your insurance company, talk to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist. A lot of times you can get an extra month or an extra few weeks at no additional charge, or at the very least they'll give it to you, and then you don't want to wait till you deplete through it. You always want to keep that on hand. Don't let them go to waste. Always put the stuff into rotation so that you keep refilling it and replenishing it and using it. Under the bed kit, as I mentioned, tying this to a leg of your bed, so when the earth starts moving, your supplies don't go moving along with it across the room. Closed-toed shoes, socks, leather gloves. I know there's vegans who really don't like leather. I don't know that there is a reliable synthetic material that will not melt when it gets too hot. Leather will allow you to touch something hot, maybe not for a long period of time, but real leather will handle the heat a lot better than synthetic. And that's certainly something you don't want to experience, is having your gloves melt on your hands. Socks are important because just being in a shoe or a boot in an uncomfortable weather situation, humidity, water, that sock is going to provide a layer of insulation, but also a layer of comfort too. And I recommend you have extra pairs of socks, because if your socks do get wet, that is an extremely uncomfortable situation. So being able to swap out your socks may be really a comfort, if not a health and safety issue as well. Hard hat to protect your head against falling objects. Obviously, things are going to be flying in an earthquake. Things are going to be moving. Things may be falling off the ceiling. And if you get hit in the head, at best, you're not going to have a good experience with it. At worst, it could actually injure you or incapacitate you. And a hard hat is designed to deflect away from you. So if something falls and hits you on the head on your hard hat, it's gonna bounce away from you and hopefully not absorb into your skull. A lot of people with doors may find that the building has shifted and you can't open the door. So pry bar, or an emergency tool with a pry bar, is going to be a good thing to have to be able to get through a door that may not be working as well as it could have been or was before the earthquake. When you store a flashlight, it's best to store the batteries outside of the flashlight. And the reason is that you want to make sure that your batteries don't go bad. Alkaline batteries will start to go bad immediately when you put them into a flashlight. And if it's hot and humid, those batteries will go bad a lot faster and begin to leak inside your flashlight. When they say batteries have a 10-year shelf life, that means in the original container, unopened. So if you're going to get a flashlight, and I highly recommend that you do, I would buy a pack of batteries and just store it with the flashlight. Light sticks are also a good idea, because you can snap a light stick and it'll give you light for 6 hours or so. They do have a shelf life, so you do need to make sure that you replace your light sticks periodically. If you wear eyeglasses or contact lenses, make sure you have an extra pair of eyeglasses, because inevitably after the earthquake, where you put your eyeglasses are not going to be where your eyeglasses still are. And if they've shattered when they hit something, and you need them to see, having that extra pair in your bag is going to be really critical. A whistle is an amazing idea, because you can only yell for so long, probably not very long at all. A whistle you can blow for days, if not weeks, and not ruin your throat. Sanitation is something that we never talk about, but is going to be critical. How many of us really have not gone gone without a toilet for more than a day or so? It's not something we want to think about. If you go camping, a lot of campgrounds have flushing toilets and showers because that is something we're used to. And a lot of people will camp as long as there's flushing toilets and showers. So thinking about sanitation is one of those things that it might be a foreign concept, but if you can't flush your toilet, you're still going to have to go to the toilet. I recommend the simplest way is get a 5-gallon bucket, um, cut a pool noodle, and make that into a makeshift seat. Make sure you have a drawstring trash bag that you can put in there, and cat litter. Cat litter is designed for cats to go in and absorb the moisture and clump. And it can be used for non-cats. That's about as far as I'm going to say about that, but it makes for a suitable toilet. Cat litter in a bag, 5-gallon bucket with a pool noodle. Make sure you have toilet paper too. We all know what happened at the beginning of COVID, and it's not something you think about running out of toilet paper. But when you run out of toilet paper, it is something you're going to think about, and it's going to become a problem. Additionally, you want to have tarps, plastic sheeting, contractor bags. Those are the really big trash bags that are a little bit extra durable. You're going to have debris that you're going to have to clear. You're going to have things that have to be cleaned up, and maybe windows that are broken, and you want to cover them up, keep the weather out. We all know that, or at least those who were in Los Angeles, when that hurricane missed us, we got lucky. We also had an earthquake. It became the hurricane. So worst case scenario is you're going to have a disaster within a disaster. An earthquake while it's raining and no power, no heat, and your front window blew out, and now it's raining horizontally into your living room. Having a tarp that you can put up to cover that and keep the rain out is going to make everyone's life a little bit better. Duct tape, I think that goes without saying. Rope or paracord. For those of you who don't know what paracord is, it was used in the military a lot, but it's used a lot by everybody. Very sturdy rope. 550 paracord is, in theory, going to hold about 550 pounds, but I wouldn't count on it. But it is fairly durable and should not rot as well. One of the pluses about paracord. Antibacterial hand wipes. There was a big thing about hand sanitizer, using alcohol-based hand sanitizer. I am not a fan of that. I really don't like it because alcohol dries out your hands. And what you're trying to do is prevent anything bad on your hands from getting in and contaminating you, making you sick. But our skin is our protective layer. And if you dry out your skin with alcohol, it's going to crack and actually open up. And so I'm not a fan of alcohol-based hand sanitizer. There's something called BZK wipes. They're used in the medical profession for wiping down wounds because it won't dry out the skin. They also make BZK hand sanitizer wipes. And I say wipes because you want to get whatever's on your hands off. If you just use hand sanitizer and wipe, that dirt, that whatever you're trying to get off is still on your hands. If you use a wipe, you can actually get it off your hands and kill it as well, hopefully. Unscented bleach can be used to purify water, clean things that are not sanitary. One thing that's not talked about with unscented bleach is that it has really a 6-month shelf life. And every year after that 6 months, it loses about 20% of its potency. So if you've had bleach in your closet for 20 years, might be time to replace it. Again, toilet paper, toilet paper, toilet paper. You can have too much toilet paper, but when you need toilet paper, you're gonna need toilet paper. And you can use toilet paper as facial tissue as well. Kleenex. In addition to your home kit, your under the bed kit, you also want to have a go kit. Again, if you have to evacuate, you're not going to have time to get stuff, or you may not have time to get everything you need in pack bags. So if you have a backpack, some extra clothes, maybe some older clothes you're not going to wear, already in there, sleeping bag, Mylar blankets, some camping gear, all ready to go, near the front exit of your home or near your garage where it's easily grabbable, or in both locations. Also battery bank, charged electronics, your phone. And I would also recommend that you keep important documents on a USB stick and also online, because if your house burns down, that may be the only way you have of restoring those documents or proving that you have these documents. Emergency money is always good because when there's no power, there's no ATMs and credit card machines don't work. We know cell phone networks are going to fail, so using your electronic devices to pay for things probably not going to happen. But this is not where you want to have a $100 bill, not even $20 bills. I would recommend ones, fives, and tens at the largest denomination. If you go someplace and you need to buy a bottle of water and you only have a $20 bill on you, I can almost guarantee that they will not be able to make change for you, and that bottle of water is going to cost you $20. So best to have small denominations, ones and fives, preferably. How much, that is going to depend on what you're capable of having in reserve. Some people have said $300. I know $300 is a lot of money, and not everybody's going to be able to have $300 of cash on hand. It's also maybe not the safest thing to do. So it's something personal you're going to have to decide, but start with $20, a couple of fives and 10 ones. But one thing I want to emphasize is you should not hurt yourself to get prepared. Don't go out and buy 3 weeks worth of food if you can't afford to have 3 extra weeks of food. It's not worth it. Buy an extra can periodically. Buy a little extra water periodically. Don't go out of the way to get prepared and put yourself into a problem. I recommend one flashlight per person. Again, with the unused batteries, put them both in a bag, batteries and flashlight, and then they're ready to go. Glow sticks, battery-powered lantern. Flashlight can only do so much. It's directional. So having a lantern that can light up the entire room is a good idea. First aid kit, and learn how to use first aid. Learn how to do first aid. Learn how to use the kit. It doesn't make sense for you to buy a field trauma kit if you don't know how to use it. I don't know how to use a scalpel and be able to do sutures. So there's no point in me having a suture kit and a scalpel. Make sure that you have the kit that's to the level of your training, and go get additional training. Take first aid, take emergency medical responder. If you can, get into an EMT class. It's a great way to learn more advanced first aid, but it's still basic first aid. Two-way radios so you can communicate with your family. Again, don't have the batteries in them, have extra batteries on hand. And playing cards. If you're going to be without power for a couple of weeks and you have kids, their cell phones are not probably going to last a couple of weeks. And if cell phones, TV, video games are their primary form of entertainment, you're going to want to get creative on how to keep your kids entertained and your sanity intact. The American Red Cross has a great guide, 21 weeks to prepare. Like I said, don't go out and buy everything at once. You want to take your time preparing because hopefully the big one's not going to happen this year. Hopefully it's not going to happen tomorrow. So taking 21 weeks, a little bit at a time, it's going to make you feel better and it's not going to hurt. Hopefully won't break the bank. You could search for American Red Cross 21 weeks to prepare. Looks like somebody posted in the chat as well. So you can click that. And there's a Spanish version as well. Now that you've taken care of yourself and your family, we talked about it earlier. Community is continuity. There are some neighborhoods that have been through a massive disaster that will never come back. Paradise, the town in Hawaii and Maui, burned to the ground. There's been other times, neighborhoods during the Northridge quake, other quakes, where people gave up hope. Maybe it wasn't a total loss, but it was bad. And they gave up and they moved out. They moved out of California. They moved out of wherever they were living. When the community's gone, the community's not coming back. And unfortunately, a lot of times what developers will do is they'll know, hey, you might have had fire insurance, but it's going to take you years to rebuild. And this has happened during the fires here in Los Angeles, years before they could rebuild. And the developer will come in and say, that insurance is going to pay you in parts, in steps. They're not going to give you all the money at once. We'll buy your property, move somewhere else, take the check. And a lot of these towns don't exist anymore. These neighborhoods don't exist anymore. These communities don't exist anymore. But for those of you who've lived in this community for a very long time, that is your home. It might not be what you want to do. You might not want to move to another state. You might want to continue living there. So community is continuity. Get to know your neighbors. It's something we don't do very often anymore, especially in Los Angeles. We commute to work 30 miles away. And so when we get home, we don't want to talk to your neighbors. We want to go inside, spend time with the kids, watch TV. But getting to know your neighbors, planning with your neighbors is how community is going to survive the disaster. And disasters happen all over the place. You can't say, we don't have disasters here. We just haven't had one recently. Doesn't mean we're not going to have one soon. So it really is up to you and your neighbors to make sure that your community continues to exist. And this is where we're talking about. What is your neighborhood? There's various definitions out there, and no one is really consistent. So the terminology that we've put together is a neighborhood block is 10 to 25 households. About a block. A neighborhood is made up of multiple neighborhood blocks, somewhere between 60 to 6,000 households. And again, these are very, very rough numbers. But apartment, large condo complexes, they can be their own neighborhood. You might have 6,000 people living in your building. You might have 600 people living in your building, or you might just have 60. A community is made of multiple neighborhoods. We're talking about 6,000 to 60,000 households. And it might be very diverse. It might be a hilly area. Might be, very flat and you can see tracks of homes. But when we're talking about neighborhood and we're talking about community, this is the numbers we're talking about. And for those of you who live outside of Los Angeles, your city might be 6,000, your town is 6,000, or maybe your city is 60,000. So find out what your neighborhood is, find out what your community is. It's probably defined even if you don't even know it. Talk to your neighbors who have been there longer than you. And they might, or go on nextdoor.com, see if anyone's defined it. When you get to know your neighbors, you're going to find out who you can trust. I was talking with a senior lead officer from LAPD, and he said that statistically, 10% of any group does not belong there. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. It means that maybe they just don't jive, or maybe they are bad people. Maybe they're untrustworthy. Maybe you know your coworkers, and you know that one person who nobody likes, or you know that they're taking home supplies from the supply closet. You know that when lunch goes missing, your lunch goes missing, it's probably this person. Get to know who you can trust, build mutually beneficial relationships with them. Going into your home when you get home and closing the garage door behind you is not a way to do that. But it's hard. I speak from an area that really is literally people will drive into their garage and close their garage door before they even get out of their home, out of their car, just to avoid talking to their neighbors. But as you build your relationship with your neighbors, know who you trust, and better yet, know who you can't trust. You can start to share your plans with them. Talk to them, see if they have any plans. Make sure that you're all coming together and know what each other are capable of doing. Maybe someone's an EMT, maybe someone's a nurse, maybe someone is a caregiver, maybe someone has ability challenged family members. Maybe someone's on oxygen and needs a CPAP machine to sleep at night. These are the things you're going to learn as you get to know your neighbors. And maybe you do. Maybe your family has these challenges. And when you're not home and they are, they're going to look in on your family and vice versa. When you find people who you can't trust, don't shun them, don't create an enemy. Be respectful. You should always be respectful. Be cordial. Because maybe they're just, your personalities don't really jive, but they're still great people and they're going to want to help you. But if you create an enemy, then they're not. Just be careful what you share with them. If you know you don't feel like you can trust them, don't share, oh, I'm going out of town for 2 weeks and no one's going to be here at my home. Maybe don't share that with them. But the people who you do know that you do trust, hey, I'm going to be out of town for a couple of weeks. Can you just, you got my cell phone number. If anything weird's happening, can you pick up my mail? I'm expecting a package. Can you just pick it up and hold it for me when I get back, or put it out of the way where no one can see it? It makes life better. When we say that no household can anticipate and prepare for everything, there are people who think that they've got a bunker full of supplies and they've got every contingency planned. They're probably the first ones that are going to have a problem when that disaster occurs. Or maybe they won't be. But the truth is, it's really hard to plan for every contingency and every possibility. You really want to develop that relationship because you're going to want to share resources. And if you're working together as a neighborhood block, you're working together with your neighbors after the earthquake happens, after the power goes out, after everyone's natural gas shuts off, and no one has clean drinking water. You're going to find that when you don't have something, or you have a little bit extra something, sharing it with your neighbor is going to make life better during the very uncomfortable part of getting through this disaster. One barbecue, what's going to happen for sure is if the power's out for multiple days, you're going to have food in your freezer that needs to get cooked. You're going to have food in your refrigerator that needs to get cooked. And if someone has a barbecue, they can cook multiple meals and you can really speed up the process. And then that way that food doesn't go to waste. If somebody has a generator, they can charge multiple people's batteries, cell phones. And if you have a lot of something, the same thing, like a freeze-dried can of food, that can serve, 20 servings, once you open it, it's going to start to degrade. You want to use it up fairly quickly, but you might not want to have 20 servings of vegetarian lasagna out of this can. So you might want to share with your neighbors, and hopefully they're going to share with you at the same time. And that gives a little diversity. It gives a little cuts through the monotony of having the same thing over and over again. As I mentioned, you really want to get to know your neighbor's skills, abilities, and equipment. Somebody has a chainsaw, somebody has a generator. You don't want to borrow someone's chainsaw and hurt yourself, but if someone is an electrician or carpenter, plumber, these are going to become skills that you need after the earthquake. Because trying to find a plumber who's going to come out and fix your water, broken pipes, is going to be really hard to do for probably months after that earthquake has occurred. They're going to be very busy. Someone's on oxygen or wheelchair bound, or if latchkey kids, you work late and your kids come home, having your neighbor who can check in on them or vice versa is going to be, it's going to help you rest assured that someone's there who you trust. And again, you want to do this just because even if there isn't a disaster, you help each other out. That's what neighbors are. It's something we've lost, unfortunately, more recently. Neighborhood communication is going to be very useful for a couple reasons. One, if you're trying to talk to your family across multiple blocks, or you're going to talk to your neighbors across multiple blocks. But if you have a plan with communication, it's great if everybody uses the family radio service radios and has a neighborhood channel. Something happens, the power goes out. That's an indication you should turn on your radio and check in. Or there's an earthquake, or you hear a large boom, or several sharp bangs. Turn on your radio and check in, because you don't necessarily want to go outside and investigate what those bangs were in case somebody is shooting, or maybe everything's okay. You just check in on the radio, check in on the neighborhood channel, and you find out real quickly, oh yeah, that house a few doors down that we all know about, yeah, its windows have blown out and it's damaged my house too. Or everything's fine, yeah, someone set off a firework, cops are on their way. Nothing to worry about. So it's as simple as if you turn on the radio, you just check in. If you have call signs, and I recommend call signs. My call sign is Cabrillo 1. This is Cabrillo 1. My family is safe. My house is undamaged. Simple as it is. Or this is Cabrillo 1. I have a family member who fell down the stairs, possibly broke their leg. My front window's shattered and I see cracks in the wall. Start hearing that, things are not okay. And it's probably time to start really organizing your neighborhood response team. We do recommend that you put a help okay sign out. This is so that when you're canvassing your neighborhood, at a quick glance, you can tell if somebody needs help or if they're okay. And they look something like this. A lot of different organizations put it out there. The city has a few of these that they've sent out, maybe door hangers. Red Cross with Map Your Neighborhood has these. We've created some and handed them out as well. Just says okay on one side, date and time. So that's important because if you're going through a few days later and this hasn't been updated and you haven't seen your neighbors, maybe things are no longer okay. Might be time to check in with them. Or they need help. This is something you should be looking for as you're checking to see if your neighbors need help, obviously. A lot of this comes from the Map Your Neighborhood program, or in LA City, it's called the Ready Your LA Neighborhood, which is based upon the Map Your Neighborhood program. This Map Your Neighborhood was created in Washington State some time ago. The Ryland program, of course, in LA City, everything has to be LA centric. So, Ready Your Los Angeles Neighborhood. It's basically the same thing, but it's a great program for getting to organize your neighborhood block. Very simple, very not so time consuming. The caveat is you do have to talk to your neighbors. I can't emphasize that enough, and you really can't get around that. Get to know your neighbors and then say, hey, heard about this Map Your Neighborhood or this Ready Your LA Neighborhood program. You can reach out to LA City Emergency Management Department and request a workshop. readyla.org is the website, and talk to them about coming out and facilitating or doing maybe a webinar to facilitate this. And they can go over the details with you. Part of this, in addition to getting to know your neighbors and skills, abilities, limitations, and equipment, is identifying neighborhood gathering sites. This is something that should be visible. You want your neighbors to go to the gathering site and check in and share information. And this is where you're going to organize response. This should be very visible so that people know to come there, even if they haven't been part of the plan. They see a bunch of people congregating and going in one direction. Generally speaking, they're going to also want to find out what's going on. From there, you're going to form teams 2 to 3 members. You're going to check on vulnerable members of the community that you've identified and that you know are going to need help. You're going to go door to door checking for help signs and check in with homes that have no sign, because you want to make sure that they don't need help and, you know, they're not trapped under something. If you smell, hear, or see leaking natural gas, this is when you want to turn off the gas. A lot of homes in LA have the automatic shutoff valves. If there's greater than a 5.5, I think, it'll shut off the gas. But a lot of the older homes don't. And if there's a broken natural gas, you see it. If you see the dials spinning, and you don't smell natural gas, chances are, if it's spinning really fast, there's a leak inside the home. And if you shut off the gas at the meter, you can actually save that home from, I don't know, exploding or catching fire. And your neighbors, if they aren't home, might appreciate that. Don't just go turn off people's gas, because it's going to take a while before the gas company can come out and restore gas service, and your neighbors won't appreciate that unless there was really a leak. One team stays at the gathering site for other people to come in and to monitor the situation via radio. And you're going to communicate with FRS radio on that neighborhood channel. You want to go back to the neighborhood gathering site every 30 to 60 minutes just to check in and get any updated information, and also share information that you collected. And it could be as simple as being outside in someone's front yard in front of the garage. Addition to the gathering site, you're going to want to have neighborhood care centers. People who are elderly, who have ability challenges, or have medical needs, as well as children, can congregate at the neighborhood care center. This should be inside, sheltered, especially if it's raining. You want it to be comfortable and warm. And hey, grandparents and grandchildren tend to get along very well. So people who think that, oh, I'm older, I can't do anything, there's always something they can do. And that might just be taking care of others. And, they don't want to be left alone either. So having some place that they can all go to and take care of each other is a great idea. Also, if anybody needs medical attention or needs to be observed, maybe they hit their head, they feel dizzy, they don't feel good, they feel sick to their stomach after getting hit in the head. You don't want to leave this person alone. They probably have a concussion. You want to make sure they don't get any worse. So this is also a place that they can stay and be monitored. The Community Emergency Response Team's motto is do the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the shortest amount of time. That last part's really critical. And oftentimes we just hear do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and we leave out in the shortest amount of time and really do a disservice to it. And as we train, especially at the CERT level, we tend to overthink things. And in a drill, that's okay. But in real life, if someone's bleeding to death in front of you and you're having an argument amongst yourselves about the best way to stop the bleeding, the person's going to bleed out before you do anything. So in the shortest amount of time, keep that in mind. There's always a clock. There's always a priority. There's always multiple priorities, and you have to get things done in a timely fashion. Don't overthink things. Don't over discuss. Come up with a plan quickly and then get it done. As I mentioned earlier, the Community Emergency Response Team in LA City is 17 and a half hours of training. It runs for about 7 weeks, once a week, 2.5 hours a session. They go over a lot of great skills: disaster preparedness, fire safety and utility controls. If you've never used a fire extinguisher, you'll get an opportunity to at least use a simulated one, if not a real one, depending on the class. Disaster medical operations 1 and 2. You're going to learn how to do basic first aid. It's not a first aid class, but you'll learn how to do basic bandaging, stopping bleeding, doing first aid, doing hands-only CPR, stop the bleed, as well as triaging multiple injured survivors in a very short amount of time and prioritizing who needs to go to the hospital first, who needs medical attention first. Light search and rescue. If someone has in their home is trapped under something, this might be where you're going to need to go into someone's home and rescue them, get them out of there. Especially at night, we're going to teach you how to safely search a building like the fire department does. Team organization, the incident command system, disaster psychology, and what CERT's relationship in a terrorist incident is. How we're going to not actively engage with it, and maybe how to get out of there or at least be safe if we happen to be caught in that. One of the biggest things that they teach you, again, in CERT is take care of yourself and your family first, then help your neighbors. Said this a few times already. But we also don't bring a victim to an incident. We have a basic level of training so that we understand our limitations, so we don't make the situation worse or become a victim ourselves. And it's an option if you want to help your neighbors. I said, take care of yourself and your family first, and then if you want to help your neighbors. It's not a requirement. Don't think that if you take the CERT training, you're going to have to do something. If you just want to take the training for yourself, do so. If you can take care of yourself and your family, that's one less family that the fire department needs to worry about. And then we go into organizing the neighborhood, community level, and how you can be a force multiplier for the fire department. This is one of the drills we did. I think this might have been a lost hiker drill or a hiking drill. We kind of already went about this. The most important part about this slide is the website cert-la.com/eventbrite. That's going to give you the list of the classes. If you find that there's a class already in session, you've missed the first session, just go. Typically, as long as you complete sessions 1 through 7, you'll still graduate on time. But talk to the firefighter who's teaching it.
And Patrick, you mean 2 through 7?
What did I say?
1 through 7?
If you complete 2 through 7, you'll probably graduate on time. If you complete 1 through 7, you'll definitely graduate on time. Now, the CERT program is a great training program. It does a lot. It gives you a lot of resources. It gives you a toolkit that you can utilize for almost any situation you encounter. What it doesn't do is give you a lot of specific examples. There's a lot of questions, what's next? And that's where Chin, who's a South Bureau coordinator, myself, Central Bureau coordinator, and other coordinators have developed this neighborhood team program. It was actually created before we even were coordinators. It's been around for almost 15 years now. And it really takes CERT to the next level. It combines the CERT training, it combines the Map Your Neighborhood or Ready Your LA neighborhood organization, and even works with neighborhood watches. It's really community grassroots driven. We need people who say, hey, I want to be a neighborhood team leader. I want to build the team in my neighborhood. And then we work with you and help you do this. What you're going to find is that the city has too many things going on to really focus on this small neighborhood team and really build it. And that's why they've appointed us as coordinators, so we can work with you. They can do the basic teaching, and then we take it from there and start building the team with you. And we'll focus on helping you recruit other members, train you to be a better leader, guide you in the creation of your neighborhood disaster response team. And what we've been doing since COVID is really standardizing this, because pre-COVID, a lot of the CERT trainings were completely different. If you went to a drill in the Valley, you went to a drill in coastal San Pedro, they'd be two completely different things, because the CERT training gave you the resources and tools, but made you figure it out on your own. What we've done is standardized it and said, okay, here's the baseline template. Here's how you get started. You don't have to do this, but if you want an idea of how to do it, here's how you can do it. And we can drill consistently to that same template, so that when you go to a drill in West Adams on Sunday and you just came from the drill in Studio City last month, it's going to look the same organization, the same things we do over and over again. So you get that repetition instead of learning a completely new way of doing things. We as coordinators, volunteers like you, created this program to really help you organize and train and develop as a neighborhood team leader. What we do is we do an orientation lecture series, which is actually led by one of our coordinators or one of our neighborhood team leaders. We develop step-by-step guides to really give you that basis for how you get started and where you want to go with things. And then we've developed these drill templates so that we train and drill to that same level every single time, but it also doesn't take 6 months to plan a drill. We can do these pretty quickly because we're doing the same setup every single time. And then after we start to develop this team with you, we're going to work with you to find a staging area that your team is going to be able to go to after the earthquake and work with you and your neighborhood council to put a kit there that's going to have everything you need for the first 3 hours of operation to get started. Whiteboard, clipboards, forms, radios, medical resupply. And we're going to link you up with your coordinator so that you can get continued support throughout this journey. Now, one thing that we specified is that neighborhood disaster response teams are both CERT and non-CERT trained members. If there's someone in your neighborhood that wants to be part of the solution and they haven't taken the CERT training, they're more than welcome to come and drill with us, train with us. Hopefully they'll take the CERT training at some point, but they don't have to. I think that was an earthquake. Or a truck driving by, one of the two. This is designed to be a whole neighborhood, whole community response. We want to engage with businesses. We want to engage with houses of worship. In a purely residential area, we're going to work with what we have and find a solution for you. One thing, though, we do specify is that the teams have to be CERT trained, member led. It has to be someone who has the training to keep other people safe while they let you, who might not be trained, do the hands-on stuff. So that way, you know, someone is watching out for you, making sure that you're safe as you help your neighbors. After we set up at the staging area and deploy out teams, we'll deploy out damage assessment teams, very similar to what the fire department does. Identify, report incidents. You're going to triage and stabilize them, and then you need to move on. Because if you get stuck at someone who has a broken arm and is in a lot of pain, and it takes you 2 hours to get them somewhere where they're feeling safe, then you might have missed something, that someone was dying and you could have done something about it, but you took 2 hours before you can even get to them. The incident response teams are going to be larger teams that can go to where the incidents are and deal with them and bring them to conclusion. But you need to know what's out there, what incidents need to be worked on, so you can prioritize them and do the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the shortest amount of time. Those orientation sessions, we're doing them in person as well as online. We have an in-person session going on right now in the United LA area. Where's that, Chin? All right, I think we lost Chin. The sessions are going to focus on a lot of the stuff we've talked about already tonight. Neighborhood preparedness and organization with Map Your Neighborhood or Ryland. Personal and family preparedness, we're going to go more in depth into that. Responding to a disaster in your neighborhood as a CERT team or a neighborhood disaster response team, and really what those team dynamics look like and how those teams operate. And then an entire session on how to use a two-way radio efficiently to communicate. It's a lot harder than it sounds if you don't do it very often. An entire session on disaster first aid and medical triage. And finally, we add to it with neighborhood security and developing situational awareness. After 5 days after that earthquake has occurred, if you don't have power and the stores are empty, things are going to get very interesting. And people may be looking to take advantage of a situation, look for opportunities to get supplies from other people. But if you work together with your neighbors, you look like an organized neighborhood, they're not going to want to deal with you. They want to go for an easier target. And finally, we'll help you schedule your first neighborhood disaster drill. Talked about the staging area. Again, that's where people are going to go. Even if the power's out, your cell phones don't work, everybody knows to meet there. You want to keep accountability for your teams. You want to make sure that you know who's here, who's checked in, and that they check out safely. The worst thing that could happen is you lose someone. Nobody knows where they went. We've had people leave during a drill. They're just like, "Oh, I'm not feeling this. I'm just gonna walk away." And fortunately, someone said, "Hey, you got to check out at the staging area first. Otherwise, we don't know. Did they fall into a hole somewhere? Did they get taken out by a pack of marauding dogs, coyotes?" Um, team member accountability is critical. Making sure everyone goes home safely. And you want to track your teams out in the field again for that accountability, but making sure, hey, we haven't heard from this team in a while. Maybe we need send another team looking for them. Where were they last known to be? And you want to find out how bad it is and where resources are needed to be prioritized. And those staging areas are going to communicate up to the first in station leaders, as well as hopefully with command post liaison team with the fire department. Because then if we have communication with them and we do need fire department resources, we have that communication set up. We do these drills. Our last drill again was at Studio City last month at one of our staging areas. And this month is going to be in West Adams area, Mid-City, Los Angeles. When we're looking for staging area kit location, ideally, House of Worship, those tend to be really great community partners, businesses. We do have some staging areas that are located in someone's home, in a backyard or a side yard. Not ideal, but sometimes we have to do that. What we don't specifically don't do is put a staging area to school. Schools go into lockdown if there's children on campus, and then we don't have access to that staging area. Fire stations also tend to not be good locations. We don't want the staging area out in the open, so public park tends to not be the best location either. We do need 24/7 access because if the property owner is in Jamaica when the earthquake happens, we need to be able to get access to that kit. We've also done drills out of the back of a truck. Pretty much we can go anywhere and do a drill anywhere. Again, they're designed to be easy to put on, repeatable. We've designed them to be engaging. There's nothing worse than you go to something and you hear someone like me talking for 2 hours about the same stuff you've heard every single time you've been out there. So we try and really keep these drills engaging because we don't want you to get bored. We want to make you think and experience new experiences and new ideas. One thing that we are specific about is our team sizes, and this is based on a lot of incident command system and talking to the fire department, talking to people who do this on a regular basis. Our teams, 2 people is not a team. Yes, stay in pairs at your minimum, but the team, a minimum of 3, because that third person's the team leader. That team leader makes sure everyone makes it home safe. You have a scribe and a radio operator making up the other 2 positions on this 3-person team. That's a solid team. You add in a couple responder pairs. Again, pairs. They work together, they stay together. And now you have a team of 5 or 7, and this team can get some stuff done. First aid, search and rescue. They can do a lot of things. When you're working with a pair, if you're doing medical, we recommend one hands-on, one hands-off. The hands-off person is scribing, handing supplies out of the bag, because we've done drills where there was moulage in the medical bag. What did that mean? Well, somebody got up after assessing someone, got their gloves dirty, gooey, gunky, and then contaminated the medical bag. So we do things for a reason. A lot of thought has gone into this, a lot of best practices we've developed over the last several years of doing these drills over and over again. So the makeup of the neighborhood team program is CERT at the higher level, the team leadership level, we can do a little bit more level. combined with Map Your Neighborhood or Ready Your Los Angeles Neighborhood at the neighborhood block organization level. And then Neighborhood Watch is a really great resource if you have one in your neighborhood. A lot of times they already use radios to communicate with each other. There's no reason why your neighborhood watch should not be disaster trained. Next steps. This is where we really want you to really start at the home. Make a plan with your family members. How do we get out of the house? If there's a fire in our main hallway and we're all cut off from the hallway, how do we get out and where do we meet? Start making a kit. Start to practice. Practice the exit drills in the home. If you haven't yet, if you don't get my emails, sign up at join.ntp-la.org. That'll get you on our email list so you know about the trainings that we're putting on. And when you're ready to, reach out to us. Say, hey, I want to start a neighborhood team, and we're going to help you do that. If you haven't taken the CERT training, I highly recommend it. It's free, and there's classes all over the city. If just keep an eye on that website, cert-la.com/eventbrite, and hopefully you'll see a class that you can attend at some point in the near future. When you're ready to, we'll help you organize a Ryland workshop, and we'll give you advice on what training to take and give you opportunities to practice at a drill, and maybe we'll get a drill in your area if you're willing to help us host it. Our next drill is going to be March 24th. That's this Sunday. It is, that should have said outdoors. It's going to be where the plan is right now to have an outdoor damage assessment drill. The backup contingency, if we don't have enough facilitators, and we have access to the indoors, is we might make it into a staging area operations drill. Basically a tabletop of what would be if we were having teams out in the field. It's because it's at a church, Church of Christ in West Adams, it's in the afternoon, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Typically we do morning drills, but this is an opportunity if you're busy in the morning to come out to an afternoon drill. Address is Church of Christ in West Adams. That's 4959 West Adams Boulevard in Los Angeles, 90016. And like I said, you don't have to be CERT trained. If you've never been to a drill, this is an excellent opportunity to come out and see one. You can observe or you can participate. It's up to you. Whatever level of comfort you are, but we hope you participate and come out to these drills regularly. If you have missed any of our presentations in the past or need to recap this one, it's live streamed on our YouTube channel. You can search for LAFD CERT coordinators or go to youtube.com/C for channel/LAFD CERT coordinators. You can find all of our presentations up there. If you tack a /live at the end or go to live, you'll see the live presentations that have been done. We've also tried to edit them and cut them down, cut out some of my ums and uhs out of there. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@ntp-la.org. Visit our website, ntp-la.org. All right, this was a longer presentation, but if you have any questions, I know I gave you a lot of information. This is a big overview. We did go into in depth about a lot of the specifics, but this is really what is the big picture about this? Philip Armstrong.
Yeah,
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great training. Where would we be able to find this presentation that you just used?
The slide deck?
Yes.
I might have put it up. I've done this presentation a couple of times. I might have linked it with the presentation on the YouTube channel.
Okay. Thanks.
Chin, I noticed that there was a lot of chat going on. I haven't been following most of it. Was there anything interesting that you want to bring up?
Yeah, we talked about a lot of interesting things over the course of the talk. One thing which was a really good question. Somebody asked if they are in an apartment. You know, we talked about all the things they should have, 1 gallon per person per day, go bag and all that kind of stuff. If you're in a very small apartment, and it's a very valid question, especially here in LA, how do you make that work?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Did you have any good ideas out of that?
You know, I said the basic thing. Do what you can with the area you've got. Um, some preparedness is better than no preparedness at all. We did talk about using like your water. If you have a water heater, work to preserve that. Make sure you know how to turn off the water so it doesn't get leached into. In terms of food, we already have food. So if we're lucky enough to remain in place, you have access to that food, especially canned goods. So, you know, there are things we can do, but there is a true problem for those people who are in very limited spaces.
Yeah, absolutely is. A lot of times you're gonna have to get creative. Sometimes there's really no good option, but um, that's why I'm not saying you need to have 3 weeks worth of food and water. You need to have 3 days worth of food and water. If you can have a little bit extra, that's the best you can do. That's the best you can do.
Exactly. And like we said, do what you can with what you've got. Again, a little bit of preparedness is really good, but hey, don't when you start trying to figure out how to meet everything we're talking about, we don't want your eyes to roll back in your head and you just simply throw up your hands and say, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Do what you can. Now, there was one more comment that I addressed while we were in there in the chat. One of our attendees said, well, I thought that in terms of we're talking about all this preparedness and what you need, they thought that there might have been pods around the city that the city put out for consumption and use of the population. And you got to remember, with a city like Los Angeles, we have 4 million people. No city, no municipality has anything like that for that many people. It's an impossibility. So that's why we have to be so prepared. So those were the two things that stuck out. There were a lot of other discussions going on back and forth, but those were the two that really stuck with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to question also the maintenance of those pods. There are pod is also an acronym for point of distribution. So it's might be a confusing term, but generally speaking, what the plan is when a major disaster occurs, outside resources, National Guard, Red Cross, they'll bring in resources and they'll have designated points of distribution within the communities where you can come get water, food, stuff like that. But there's going to be long lines and they'll run out. And and I'm sure there have been initiatives in the past to have emergency kits, disaster kits somewhere, but some of these might be 20 years old and not maintained. And chances are it was a political stunt. Not that it's not a good thing, but it's not enough. It's hey, I'm doing this for the community. And then 60,000 people show up and they had enough for 60 people. It's not something you should rely on, but there are plans out there. And unfortunately, the reality is it's going to be all hands on deck. It's going to be everyone working together. The best thing you can do is be prepared and have plans with your immediate neighbors. Because trusting other people's plans, you don't know if they've been tested, you don't know if they're up to date, and you don't know how well they can be executed.
two things I want to kind of inject in there. One, I have seen one of these types of little point of distribution or volunteer cash. And I can back up what Patrick said. We looked inside of it, and Jose, I think you were with me on this one as well. I've looked in it before, but there were batteries in there, D-cell batteries that were dated 1996.
Yeah,
The medical
pretty
stuff
bad.
in there was dated 1996. I drive a car that's from 1993. That car is 30 years old. So you got batteries in there that are 27 years old. Do you expect that stuff to work? But number two on my list, going back to what Patrick said very early, in Los Angeles, and I grew up here. I don't know how it got this way. We are a population that doesn't want to talk to each other, but you will find very quickly that disaster or whatever it is going to make you talk to your neighbors, and you don't want to be awkward, like saying, "Hey, Patrick, I've lived next to you for like 25 years and we've never said hi, and I've done my best to avoid you. Patrick, do you have any food that I can trade with you?" That's awkward. And we know
No,
that he'd
but I can
say
tell you
no
where
to
to
me
go to
anyway.
find some.
Yeah, he'd say no to me anyway, but you want to have that connection with your neighbors. And if you have it, it's going to make you're going to get forced because, like Patrick said, you may have prepared for just your family, but you haven't prepared for everything. There's something out there that your neighbor has that you might want a piece of. And if you guys have connected, made those plans in advance, it's all there. But if you're trying to make it that morning of the disaster, just saying.
When it comes to water, though, you go to the surplus stores, they have the canned water. You can get the cases of water. Those are good for a long time. And you can put them in your closet and they'll be safe. You could buy a few cases. You don't have to have the big barrels or anything like that. That's what I have. I live in a condo. So I deal with that. I have to deal with space that's available. So I have about 4 cases of those water cans. I'm only going to use them in an emergency. And I usually drink bottled water anyways, but for emergencies, I have the canned stuff. You can get them at any surplus store. They sell them in cases. Also, SOS Disaster Supplies has the little bagged water. Have you seen those? Like the I forget the punch that the kids used to drink in school.
Yeah, that you punch the little
Yeah.
straw in.
Yeah, they have that too. I bought a few of those too. So I have plenty of emergency water plus regular water that I drink every day. So I don't have to worry about any of like that. And whether you like it or not, freeze-dried food goes a long way and it lasts a long time. And again, it's emergency stash. You just have to be able to store that. I have quite a few of those packs in my closet. And I have cases that I bought from these prep places. They sell freeze-dried food, and I have about 5 or 6 of those like ammo containers full of freeze-dried food. So those are the type of things you need to kind of think outside the box. I'm not necessarily a prepper, but, I don't have a bunker anywhere, but, that's the type of stuff that you have to think about. What can I use, instead
At least
of
you're not
having
telling us
canned.
that you have a bunker.
I'm not telling you anything. No, but those are the type of things you think about. You make sure you have your bag in your car, and a bag at home for every person in the house, that kind of stuff. That's you got to think outside the box. You can't. You think, oh, you need 1 gallon of water per day per person. Everybody's freaking out. You got to have these big, gigantic storage units. You didn't necessarily have to go that far. You get what you can, little by little.
Mm-hmm. One
And
other
work,
thing
and
I
again,
didn't.
work together as a community to make that
Correct.
happen. It can
Correct.
take the burden off of each of you trying to figure out, oh, what should I have? And it's a mountain of stuff. Work together as a community. Patrick.
Yeah, one thing I noticed you mentioned in the chat, and I forgot to put it in the slide deck, is when you store water, it's imperative that you do not store it directly on concrete. Plastic
Correct.
will leach, will allow chemicals to leach through, and concrete and cement actually have really nasty chemicals, and they will leach through the plastic and contaminate the water if you store plastic water bottles directly on them. You want to put down plywood, even cardboard. If you do cardboard, you need to cycle the cardboard periodically. You'll notice that if cardboard's been sitting on concrete for a while, those chemicals will actually dissolve the cardboard. And I've also seen where people have stored glass bottles of water directly on concrete, and the chemicals leach into the glass and cause the glass to deteriorate. So when you try and move the bottle, it'll actually cause the bottom to fall out of a glass bottle. Store it on plywood. If you can get like pallets, you store it on that. Or if you have a shelving unit, you can store the water there. But absolutely, positively, do not store it directly on concrete. Just got one more minute. Anything else? Jen, Jose?
Nothing there, but I will. Danny just asked a question because she had said in the chat that she may not be able to make all of the classes, and we explained gonna have to make them up outside of maybe that first one, which is just an overview. But she's saying it doesn't seem like I can contact specific CERT trainings via Eventbrite Online. How can I coordinate with the CERT trainers? Just show up to that class that you want to go, that you want to make up, and have that paper in your hand, and you can let the instructor know at the beginning or whatever it is and say, hey, I'm here because I want to make up class 3, medical or terrorism, whichever one. They will sign the form at the end of the class, letting the original instructor know you were there, and then you can turn that in. So just show up to that class. You don't have to let them know in advance.
Yeah. And I'll give you a little secret. The training is great to have, but you get a certificate of completion at the end. It's not a I mean, yeah, you can say you're cert trained, but it's about the knowledge. So if you have to take a few different sessions here and there to get the training, and you don't get a piece of paper at the end, but you got the training, that's the important part, really. So do what you
Patrick,
can with what you have. Yeah, Chin.
Patrick, I'm gonna put this little asterisk on it. You will want to have that certificate of completion if you want to go up in the organization, like join the CERT call out team, which we talk about a great deal. You can't join that unless you have completed the CERT program. So, Patrick, I'm just putting that little asterisk on.
Absolutely. But that's the big thing, is if you can attend all the classes here and there, just take the training. Even if you just want to attend one and just get the medical, just do it. You have nothing to lose. Don't let it hold you up that you can't complete the class from it in its entirety. All right, so thank you everyone for coming. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us, info@ntp-la.org, and check out our other YouTube recordings, and hopefully see you at the drill on Sunday.
Hey, Patrick, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, Chin.
After we leave here, are we going to be doing something that happens at 9 o'clock? And you know what I'm talking about? Racing out of here.
Well, I'm gonna go feed myself.
I thought it was.
I don't know what
I
you're
thought
doing.
you're going to be on NBC. That's a clue.
Chicago Fire?
You weren't supposed to tell the whole world about that.
No, I didn't think it was a secret.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good
Good
night,
night, everyone.
See you Sunday.
See you Sunday.
Good night.
Everybody. Patrick,
All right,
Ian,
thank
Jose,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.